Look around you. Every light that holds back the night, every screen that connects you to the world, every silent hum of the machine that powers our civilization, is the result of a war. Not a war fought with armies and guns, but a war of ideas, a war of ambition, a war of minds. In the late 19th century, two men, two titans of invention, stood on the precipice of a new electrical age. In one corner stood Thomas Edison, the celebrated wizard of Menlo Park, a practical genius and a ruthless businessman who had promised to put a safe, incandescent light bulb in every American home. In the other corner stood Nikola Tesla, a reclusive, eccentric visionary. A man who didn't just see the future, he dreamed it into existence. With visions of wireless energy and a world connected by unseen forces, this is the true story of the War of the Currents. It is more than just a business rivalry. It is a deep psychological autopsy of one of the most famous and bitter feuds in the history of science. It's a story of a brilliant genius and a powerful tyrant, and the dark corporate propaganda, the public animal electrocutions, and the stolen ideas that were used as weapons in their battle for the soul of the 20th century. To understand this war, we must first understand its generals. And there was no greater general of American invention than Thomas Alva Edison. He was not just an inventor. He was the inventor of the modern idea of invention itself. He was a national hero, the man who had tamed electricity and put it into a bottle. The key to understanding the mind of Thomas Edison is to understand that he was not a theoretical physicist. He was a practical, ruthless industrialist. His famous laboratory at Menlo Park, New Jersey, was not a place of idle contemplation. It was an invention factory. His stated goal was to produce a minor invention every 10 days and a major one every 6 months. He was a master of iteration, of trial and error, famously testing thousands of filaments before finding the one that would make his incandescent light bulb a commercial success. From a psychological perspective, Edison's mind was one of brute force and absolute focus. He was a pragmatist. He was not interested in discovering the beautiful, abstract laws of the universe. He was interested in creating products that could be patented, manufactured, and sold to the masses. His genius was not in the spark of a single, brilliant idea, but in the relentless, grinding work of turning an idea into a profitable reality. By the 1880s, his greatest success was the creation of a system based on direct current, or DC. It was a brilliant, but flawed, system. It could power his light bulbs, but it was inefficient. DC electricity could not travel long distances, meaning a power plant was needed for every square mile of a city. For Edison, this was not a bug. It was a feature. It meant he could build a massive, centralized empire of power stations, controlling the flow of electricity and the flow of money into his own pockets. Edison was a man who saw the world as a series of problems to be conquered, and he had built an empire on his solutions. He was confident, powerful, and utterly convinced of the superiority of his own vision. But in 1884, a young man, a genius of a completely different kind, walked into his office with a letter of introduction. A man who did not see the world as a series of problems, but as a symphony of unseen energies waiting to be conducted. His name was Nikola Tesla, and he was about to become the greatest threat to Thomas Edison's entire empire. If Thomas Edison was a man who conquered the world with his hands, Nikola Tesla was a man who built new worlds entirely within his mind. Born in the heart of a lightning storm in a small village in modern-day Croatia, Tesla was an eccentric, a visionary, a man who seemed to be tuned to a different frequency than the rest of humanity. His mind was not a factory, it was a theater of pure imagination. He possessed an eidetic memory and the incredible ability to visualize his inventions in his head with such perfect clarity that he could build, test, and even run them for weeks in his mind before ever touching a single piece of metal. Where Edison toiled through thousands of failed experiments, Tesla saw the final, perfect machine in a single, blinding flash of inspiration. From a psychological perspective, Tesla was the polar opposite of Edison. He was not driven by profit or fame, but by a pure, almost obsessive, desire to understand the fundamental forces of the universe and to harness them for the betterment of humanity. He saw electricity not as a product to be sold, but as a mystical, living force, a river of energy that flowed through the cosmos, waiting to be tapped. His greatest obsession was a concept that Thomas Edison had dismissed as impractical and dangerous: alternating current, or AC. Unlike Edison's direct current, which flowed in a single, straight line, Tesla's alternating current pulsed back and forth, changing direction dozens of times a second. This simple difference was a world-changing revolution. AC electricity could be easily stepped up to a high voltage, allowing it to be transmitted over hundreds of miles with minimal energy loss, and then stepped back down for safe use in homes and factories. It was elegant, efficient, and infinitely more scalable than Edison's DC system. It was the key to a truly interconnected, electrified world. This was the genius who, in 1884, arrived at Thomas Edison's office in New York. He was poor, his possessions lost, but he carried with him a brilliant mind and a letter of introduction from a former colleague of Edison's that simply read, "My dear Edison, I know two great men and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Edison, the pragmatist, was initially impressed by the intense, brilliant young Serbian. He hired him on the spot. Tesla's first task was to improve the efficiency of Edison's notoriously unreliable DC generators. The work was grueling, but for Tesla, it was simple. He worked day and night, redesigning the machines from the ground up. This is where the feud was born. According to Tesla's own account, Edison, in a moment of casual dismissal, Edison, according to Tesla, simply laughed. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand our American humor." He refused to pay, offering only a minor raise. In that single, dismissive moment, the psychological fault line between the two men fractured into an unbridgeable chasm. For Edison, it was a casual joke, a bit of workshop banter. For Tesla, a man of immense pride and a deep sense of intellectual honor, it was a profound betrayal. He resigned immediately. Nikola Tesla, the dreamer of a new world, walked out of Edison's factory and into the cold, unforgiving streets of New York, a genius with no money and no allies. The relationship that could have powered the world had ended in a bitter divorce, and the stage was now set for the most brutal and consequential scientific rivalry in history, the War of the Currents. After leaving Edison, Nikola Tesla was cast into the wilderness. The winter of 1886 was one of the most brutal in his life. The man whose mind contained a vision of the future was forced to work as a manual laborer, digging ditches for $2 a day just to survive. He later described this period as a time of terrible headaches and bitter tears. From a psychological perspective, this was a period of profound humiliation. He was a genius, surrounded by a world that could not, or would not, see his vision. His intellect, his greatest asset, was useless against the harsh realities of poverty. But a mind like Tesla's could not be buried in a ditch forever. He eventually found a group of investors who were intrigued by his ideas for a new arc lighting system. But it was in 1888 that he finally built and patented the invention that would change the world, the AC induction motor. It was a masterpiece of elegant simplicity, a motor with no moving electrical contacts, powered by the invisible magic of a rotating magnetic field. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, the practical engine that would make his AC system a viable reality. This invention caught the attention of the one man in America who had the resources, the vision, and the personal motivation to challenge Thomas Edison's empire, George Westinghouse. George Westinghouse was, in many ways, Edison's greatest rival. He was a brilliant inventor in his own right, having made his fortune with the invention of the railway air brake. Like Edison, he was a powerful industrialist, a titan of the Gilded Age. But their philosophies were fundamentally different. Edison believed in a centralized, controlled system. Westinghouse was a believer in competition, in a decentralized network, and he saw in Tesla's AC system the key to breaking Edison's monopoly on electricity. Westinghouse understood the immense potential of alternating current immediately. He invited Tesla to his headquarters in Pittsburgh, and the two men, the eccentric visionary and the powerful industrialist, formed an immediate bond. Westinghouse listened, not with the dismissive arrogance of Edison, but with the keen ear of a man who recognized a world-changing idea. He made Tesla an offer that would be the foundation of their alliance and the declaration of war against Edison. He offered Tesla $1 million in cash and stock for his AC patents, plus a generous royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of AC electricity sold. It was a staggering sum, a validation of everything Tesla had ever dreamed of. The alliance was forged. Westinghouse had the manufacturing power and the financial muscle. Tesla had the genius. Together they had a system that could electrify America. When Thomas Edison heard of this new alliance, he understood the threat immediately. He was not just facing a rival inventor, he was facing a rival empire. His entire DC system, the foundation of his wealth and power, was now at risk of becoming obsolete. Edison, the man of practical action, did not respond with a better invention. He responded with a weapon. He was far more skilled at wielding fear. The war of the currents was about to turn from a battle of technology into a brutal and vicious war of public opinion. Thomas Edison, faced with a technologically superior system, did what great and ruthless monopolists have always done. He did not innovate. He initiated a campaign of terror. He understood that the war for the future of electricity would not be won in the patent office, but on the front pages of the newspapers and in the hearts of a fearful public. His goal was simple and brutal: to brand Nikola Tesla's alternating current as a deadly, uncontrollable menace, a phantom killer that was waiting to leap from the wires and murder innocent children in their homes. This was the beginning of a vicious and shockingly public propaganda war. Edison, the celebrated American hero, began to hold press conferences and public demonstrations, not to showcase his own technology, but to demonize his rivals. He and his agents began to travel the country, staging a gruesome and theatrical roadshow of death. They would gather crowds in town squares, and in a grotesque display of scientific showmanship, they would take stray dogs and cats, and even old circus elephants, and publicly electrocute them using high-voltage alternating current. They called this process being Westinghoused. Let us conduct a psychological autopsy on this tactic. This was a masterclass in fear-mongering. Edison was not presenting a scientific argument. He was creating a visceral, emotional, and unforgettable image. He was linking the invisible, abstract concept of alternating current with the very real and horrifying sight of a dying animal. In the mind of the public, AC was no longer just a type of electricity. It was a synonym for death. The campaign was relentless. Edison's allies in the press published sensationalist articles filled with lurid tales of linemen being roasted alive by AC and dire warnings of the fatal current that Westinghouse was trying to bring into their homes. The propaganda was so effective that the very term electrocution was popularized during this era as a way to associate electricity with execution. But the most sinister chapter of Edison's war of fear involved a man named Harold P. Brown. Brown, an electrical engineer with a talent for public spectacle, was secretly funded by Edison to discredit AC. Brown's most infamous contribution was his work with the state of New York to create a new, more humane method of execution. He argued that the most effective and deadly way to kill a condemned prisoner was with a jolt of high-voltage alternating current. His secret goal, and Edison's coups, was to forever associate the Westinghouse-Tesla system with the death penalty in the public's mind. This led to the creation of the electric chair, and in 1890, the first execution by electrocution was carried out. The event was a botched and horrifying spectacle, a man being slowly and publicly cooked to death. But for Edison, the mission was a success. His rival's technology was now inextricably linked to the gruesome reality of capital punishment. While Edison was busy electrocuting animals and influencing the design of the electric chair, Nikola Tesla was in his own world. He was a showman of a different kind. To counter Edison's campaign of fear, Tesla staged his own, far more theatrical demonstrations. At the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, the very same fair where H. Holmes was operating his murder castle, Tesla performed a miracle. He would stand on a stage, and with millions of volts of alternating current coursing harmlessly over the surface of his body, he would illuminate light bulbs in his hands, creating a stunning and beautiful spectacle. The battle lines were now a stark contrast of psychological philosophies. Edison was selling fear. Tesla was selling magic. Edison was showing the public how AC could kill. Tesla was showing them how it could create a world of light. The war was at its peak. The fate of the electrical age hung in the balance, waiting for a single, decisive victory that would prove which system, and which man, would power the future. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago was a battleground. It was not a battle fought with armies, but with light itself. The fair's organizers wanted to create a city of light, a dazzling nighttime spectacle that would showcase the power and beauty of the new electrical age. The contract to illuminate the entire fair was the single most prestigious and influential electrical contract in the world. It was a chance to prove, on a global stage, which system, Edison's DC or Tesla's AC, was the true future. Thomas Edison, confident in his fame and political connections, submitted a prohibitively expensive bid to power the fair with his DC system. He believed he was the only man for the job. But George Westinghouse, armed with the superior efficiency of Tesla's AC patents, submitted a bid that was dramatically lower. In a stunning upset that shocked the industrial world, the contract was awarded to Westinghouse and Tesla. Edison, in an act of profound corporate spite, refused to sell his patented light bulbs to his rival. This was a move designed to cripple the project, but Westinghouse was a brilliant innovator. His team quickly designed a new, slightly different, but equally effective light bulb, circumventing Edison's patent. The race was on. What happened next was a miracle of engineering and a triumph of will. For months, Westinghouse and Tesla worked relentlessly, and on the opening night of the fair, as President Grover Cleveland pushed a button, the White City exploded into a brilliant, ethereal glow. Over 100,000 incandescent lamps, all powered by Tesla's alternating current system, illuminated the grand buildings, fountains, and lagoons. It was a spectacle that the world had never seen before. For the millions of visitors who walked through the illuminated fairgrounds, it was like stepping into a fairy tale. It was a direct, visceral, and overwhelmingly beautiful demonstration of the power and safety of alternating current. All of Edison's dark propaganda, all his stories of the fatal current, evaporated in the clean, bright, and magical light of Tesla's vision. The City of Light was the single greatest act of public relations in the history of technology. The war was effectively over. But the final, definitive victory was yet to come. The ultimate prize in the electrical age was the challenge of harnessing the immense, raw power of Niagara Falls. A commission, led by the brilliant physicist Lord Kelvin, had been searching for a way to tap into the waterfall's energy and transmit it to the burgeoning industrial city of Buffalo, over 20 miles away. Edison's DC system was incapable of such a feat. The power would dissipate over that distance. Only one system could do it: Tesla's alternating current. After the stunning success of the Chicago World's Fair, the choice was clear. The contract for Niagara Falls was awarded to Westinghouse and Tesla in 1896, with the flip of a switch. The hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls came to life, and the alternating current generated by Nikola Tesla's patents began to flow, illuminating the city of Buffalo. This was the final, undeniable victory. Tesla's dream, backed by Westinghouse's industrial might, had not just won a contract, it had won the future. The AC system became the global standard for power generation and transmission, the very system that powers our world to this day. The war of the currents was over. The visionary had defeated the tyrant. But for Nikola Tesla, the brilliant dreamer, the personal victory would prove to be a far more tragic and complicated story. The story of Tesla versus Edison is more than just a historical footnote in the history of electricity. It is a profound and timeless exploration of the very nature of genius, ambition, and the often brutal collision between pure vision and commercial reality. Let us conduct a final psychological autopsy on these two monumental figures. Thomas Edison, the pragmatic industrialist, the relentless tinkerer, the master of marketing and public perception. His focus was on the tangible, the profitable, the immediate. He understood the human desire for comfort and convenience, and he built an empire by delivering it. His psychological strength lay in his unwavering self-belief, his ruthless determination, and his deep understanding of human nature, including its susceptibility to fear. Nikola Tesla, the ethereal visionary, the dreamer of impossible futures, the intuitive genius who saw the world in waves of energy. His focus was on the elegant, the universal, the potential of a world connected by unseen forces. His psychological strength lay in his boundless imagination, his unwavering faith in his own intellect, and his almost childlike idealism. But this idealism, this detachment from the practicalities of the world, ultimately proved to be his undoing. The war of the currents was not just a battle between two different electrical systems, it was a battle between two fundamentally different ways of seeing the world. Edison saw electricity as a commodity to be controlled and sold. Tesla saw it as a force to be liberated and shared. In the capitalist world of the late 19th century, Edison's vision, though perhaps less elegant, was far more commercially viable. The tragedy of Nikola Tesla is that he was a genius born too early, a man whose grandest visions were often decades ahead of the technology and the financial will of his time. He gave the world the foundation for its modern electrical grid, and yet he died a forgotten and penniless figure in a New York hotel room. But the final chapter of this story is one of rediscovery. In the decades since his death, Nikola Tesla's contributions have been increasingly recognized and celebrated. He is no longer just a footnote in the history of Thomas Edison. He is now seen as a visionary in his own right, the true architect of the electrical age. His name graces the unit of magnetic field strength, a constant reminder of his profound impact on our world. The war of minds may have been won by Edison in his lifetime, but in the long arc of history, it is Tesla's genius, his dream of a world powered by innovation and interconnectedness, that ultimately prevails. His story serves as a powerful reminder that true vision often comes at a great personal cost, and that the most brilliant minds are not always the ones who achieve the greatest fame or fortune in their own time. Their true reward is the lasting impact they have on shaping the future of humanity. Now consider the psychological cost of this epic feud. Was Edison justified in his ruthless tactics to protect his empire? Was Tesla's idealism a strength or a fatal flaw? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let us continue the discussion about this incredible clash of titans and the lasting legacy of their war of minds. The victory at Niagara Falls should have secured Nikola Tesla's place as a titan of industry, a man whose wealth and influence would rival Edison's. He had won the war of the currents. He had given the world the system that would power its future. But in a cruel and tragic twist of fate, the man who had dreamed of a world of free, boundless energy would end his life in poverty and obscurity. The seeds of his downfall were sown in the very heart of his greatest triumph. His partner, George Westinghouse, had invested a fortune to win the war against Edison. By the late 1890s, Westinghouse's company was on the brink of financial collapse. Heavily in debt and under attack from rival finance, his bankers told him that the only way to save the company was to get out of the generous royalty agreement they had signed with Tesla. The contract, which promised Tesla $2.50 for every horsepower of AC electricity sold, was a potential liability worth billions in the future. What happened next is a moment of profound and debated tragedy. According to Tesla's own legend, George Westinghouse, his friend and champion, came to him and explained the desperate situation. He told Tesla that if the contract remained, the company would be destroyed, and the AC system they had fought so hard for would fall into the hands of their enemies. Tesla, in an act of almost unbelievable generosity and idealism, responded not as a businessman, but as a visionary. He believed that the future of his technology was more important than his own personal wealth. He took the contract, the legal document that had made him one of the richest men in the world, and he tore it up. With that single, selfless act, he voluntarily surrendered a fortune beyond imagination, sacrificing his own financial future to save the dream they had built together. From a psychological perspective, this act is the key to understanding the tragedy of Nikola Tesla. He was a man who operated on a different plane. He was not driven by the desire for wealth or power that defined men like Edison. He was driven by his vision. But in the ruthless, capitalist world of the Gilded Age, this made him profoundly vulnerable. Freed from his financial obligations, Tesla turned his brilliant mind to even grander, more fantastical projects. He became obsessed with the idea of wireless energy, a global system that could transmit power through the air itself, providing free, limitless energy to everyone on Earth. At his experimental station in Colorado Springs, he created artificial lightning bolts, massive discharges of electricity that were visible for miles. His ultimate dream was the Wardenclyffe Tower, a colossal transmission tower he began building on Long Island, New York. It was to be the first node in his world wireless system, but his ambition had outrun his finances. His primary investor, the powerful banker J.P. Morgan, pulled his funding, realizing that a system of free, unmetered energy was a philanthropic dream, but a commercial nightmare. The Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla's greatest dream, was abandoned, a skeletal monument to a future that never was. It was eventually torn down and sold for scrap to pay his debts. As Tesla descended into obscurity, a forgotten genius living in a series of New York hotels, surrounded only by his blueprints and his beloved pigeons, Thomas Edison's star only continued to rise. Edison, the master of the practical, the king of patents, solidified his legacy. He became a beloved American icon, the very symbol of ingenuity and hard work. The world remembered the man who had invented the light bulb, not the man who had invented the system that powered it. The tyrant, in the end, had won the war of public memory.